This icon braved the skies of Vietnam, but the desert sun has been an entirely different enemy.
Leaving a multi-million-dollar warrior to rot in the sand feels like leaving history itself behind. The canopy is completely blind. Decades of unshielded UV radiation have utterly destroyed the plexiglass structure. The engines are packed with desert debris. We won't know the true damage until we split the fuselage. To rebuild, we must first destroy. These frozen structural bolts require pure force to surrender. Thousands of structural fasteners stand between us and a clean, bare metal canvas. None of them want to move. 40 years of desert baking vanish in seconds under a blast of high-velocity media, revealing the original metal, stripped to its absolute foundation. Now, every hidden stress crack and battle scar is laid bare for repair. Welding structural aluminum requires absolute precision. One wrong temperature spike can compromise the structural integrity of the tail assembly. We shape the replacement panels by hand, using the exact same manual techniques employed in manufacturing back in 1965. A perfect alignment. The aerodynamic tolerances on a Mach 2 fighter leave absolutely no room for error. The final surface prep. Every single rivet head must be completely flush before we introduce the primer base. The epoxy primer seals the vintage airframe, creating a chemical bond that ensures this restoration survives another century. Wet sanding cuts the primer perfectly flat, removing micro-texture to prepare the canvas for its historical camouflage. Spraying the classic multi-tone camo. This combat livery instantly restores the rugged, unmistakable identity of a Vietnam-era warrior. Peeling back the masking reveal lines. The stencils are razor sharp, just as they rolled off the McDonnell Douglas line. Buffing the raw titanium exhaust. The frictional heat brings out the gorgeous, original rainbow oxide layers hidden beneath the suit. Reassembling the instrument panel gauge by gauge. Every flight instrument is fully calibrated back to operational specifications. The radome locks into place. The physical restoration is complete. A legend has officially been reborn. From a forgotten boneyard grave to an immortal showroom masterpiece. This is what true honor looks like. The Phantom returns. Its menacing legendary silhouette stands completely vindicated, saved from the desert sands, restored for eternity. The warrior rests in ultimate glory. The external fasteners have completely seized under the relentless heat. Desert humidity fluctuations have locked these steel components solid. The main hydraulic seals are completely shot. Decades of pressure and sun exposure have reduced them to brittle charcoal. Underneath the dust, the original markings remain. This Phantom belonged to the 366th Tactical Fighter Wing. Structural rivets have backed out entirely. The desert wind has vibrated these unanchored panels for over 40 years. The intake ramp is severely pitted. If the corrosion has eaten too deep, we will have to fabricate a whole new section. The wiring is an absolute nightmare. Rodents, likely desert mice, and baking heat have turned a complex electrical network into useless tinder. The canopy seals have turned back into a sticky, tar-like petroleum residue before drying into a solid crust. Completely seized. The internal piston is locked solid within the cylinder casing. This will require total teardown. Tapping the lower fuselage tells us if the internal moisture has completely structurally compromised the load-bearing framework. Chemical penetrants are a luxury out here. The fluid instantly boils away on the sun-baked iron threads. Nature always reclaims what we abandon. This intake wasn't compressing air, it was preserving a desert nest. Securing 15 tons of history. The desert boneyard holds it no longer. The true fight begins inside the hangar. We don't gently clean this kind of decay. We strike it hard enough to shatter the oxide bond completely. The wire wheel cuts through the outer scaling, exposing the pitting beneath. The metal is fighting back hard. When fasteners weld themselves chemically to the airframe over 40 years, destruction is our only path forward. Removing the internal armor. This slab protected pilots from anti-aircraft fire, but today it just weighs us down. The main landing gear mount breaks loose with a sound like a rifle shot. That's the sound of victory. Gatling lines of rotted hydraulics are completely gutted. We are purging the entire circulatory system of this fighter jet. The wing-fold actuators are heavily scored. Desert dust mixed with old oil to form a brutal, abrasive grinding paste. The internal fuel cells have completely collapsed and dry rotted. They smell intensely of vintage aviation fuel and stale desert air. These boundary layer splitter plates diverted stagnant air away from the engine faces. Every single structural bolt is chemically frozen. Shifting to aggressive cleanup, we are grinding away jagged, structurally compromised metal edges around the ancient landing gear inspection doors. Chemical stripping avoids warping the thin aerodynamic skins. This military-grade compound will dissolve tough epoxy paint layers within minutes. The vintage paint completely loses its grip on history. It crinkles up like dry autumn leaves ready to fall, peeling back 40 years of desert baking. The raw structural skin underneath hasn't seen light since it left St. Louis. Some corroded sections cannot be saved by simple media blasting. We must completely excise the metal cancer from this airframe. The plasma torch cuts through structural steel brackets like wet cardboard, bypassing frozen threads completely.
A final pressure wash flushes away all microscopic chemical trace. The airframe must be perfectly pure before reconstruction begins.
Every single one of these hidden rivets tells a story of supersonic speed, but right now they just show perfect structural alignment. A fighter jet frame remembers every hard combat landing. We have to gently force its structural memory back to zero. Holding massive internal loads requires raw mechanical clamping power before any permanent structural fasteners can lock it down forever. Aviation aluminum quickly oxidizes in open air. If the joint isn't perfectly sterile, the structural weld will instantly fail under load. The bright red dye reveals what the human eye misses. Even a microscopic crack can tear a tail section off at supersonic speeds. Driving solid aircraft rivets requires a steady, rhythmic cadence. Too much pressure hardens the alloy until it completely splits open. Plecos act as temporary metal stitches, holding the structural spine together before the heavy pneumatic tools finish the job. Every brand new panel starts as flat sheet stock. Cutting it smoothly avoids creating dangerous structural stress risers. The torch heat completely relaxes the molecular structure of the alloy, making rigid structural aluminum as cooperative as soft clay. Thousands of tiny, high-speed microstrikes erase the wheel marks, blending the metal skin into a completely seamless curve. Hand-beating aluminum relaxes the metal's internal stress, allowing it to hold complex aerodynamics without springing back. The mechanical jaws crimp the edges tightly, forcing the flat aluminum sheet to curve around the jet's nose radar bulkhead. The replacement wingtip slides home. If the gap is off by even a millimeter, the wind resistance will tear it away. Drilling out fresh rivet paths. Every hole must perfectly mirror the original blueprint structure from 60 years ago. Checking tolerances with the gauge. At high supersonic speeds, uneven panel gaps create intense heat and destructive turbulent drag, grabbing the final trim line. There are no second chances when cutting original tactical aviation skin panels. We knock down the heavy weld structures first, blending the raw metal until it becomes one continuous aerodynamic flow. The structural glaze fills the microscopic pitting left behind by decades of harsh desert sand abrasion. Block sanding reveals high and low spots. The hand tracks what the eye misses, ensuring a laser-straight horizon line. Every speck of static dust is pulled away. The metal skin is finally sterile, stabilized, and ready for its first color transformation. Mixing the industrial epoxy catalyst. Once combined, we have exactly 45 minutes before this base cures into solid stone. Filtering ensures that not a single microscopic speck of dried pigment clogs the fine nozzle of our spray gun. Calibrating the atomization pressure. Too high, and the primer dries mid-air. Too low, and it oranges peels across the wing. The first coat lays down flat. The gray epoxy immediately bites into the freshly sandblasted aluminum alloy skin, baking the epoxy base. The targeted infrared heat forces any remaining microscopic solvents to bake out completely. Applying a dry guide coat, this black powder settles into any micro imperfections, making low spots instantly visible during block sanding.
Upgrading to a finer 400 grit. We are graduating from aggressive flattening to absolute precision smoothing.
Squeegeeing away the wet slurry residue reveals the truth. The primer surface is now completely smooth and ready for color. A final chemical degreasing wipe removes every skin oil trace. The primer is completely sterile for the camo layers.
Popping the seal on the tactical tan base coat. This specific military tone serves as the master background camouflage color.
The tactical tan base goes on first. It acts as the background canvas for the entire multi-tone camo scheme. Masking the camouflage patterns requires referencing original 1960s military technical orders to ensure absolute historical accuracy. The field green layer brings the classic Southeast Asia camouflage scheme to life, instantly shifting the aircraft's visual identity. Blending the third camouflage tone freehand creates the authentic soft-edge transition characteristic of original depot-level military paintwork. Peeling back the primary masking reveals a flawless multi-tone pattern. The rugged warrior is finally shedding its desert scars. A specialized dead-flat clear coat ensures that the final surface matches the authentic non-reflective requirements of military aircraft. The clear coat locks in the military colors, shielding the fresh pigment from future UV exposure and physical wear. Watching the clear coat flash off to an ultra-matte finish is pure visual meditation. The camouflage looks incredibly deep. Ultra-fine wet sanding cuts down any microscopic dust nibs, making the final tactical surface feel like absolute silk. The final wipe down. The camouflage is complete, locked down, and ready to receive its fully polished hardware components. Polishing a matte military clear coat requires a delicate touch. One heavy pass can accidentally create an unrealistic glossy spot. The compound residue lifts away cleanly. The original tactical satin sheen is finally fully restored to the metal skin. The pitot tube measures airspeed at Mach 2. It needs a mirror polish to prevent any microscopic boundary layer disruption.
Inspecting the survival harness. Every mechanical latch is cleaned down to the bare steel and relubricated for preservation.
Dropping in the center console panel. The cockpit is finally transitioning from a hollow metal shell back into a workspace. Cleaning the radar gunsight glass optics. This glass reflected targeting reticles directly into the pilot's field of view. Installing fresh fuel manifold distribution blocks. The plumbing inside this engine bay is as beautiful as the exterior paint. Organizing the primary avionics wiring loom bundle. Proper clamping prevents vibration from chafing through vital data connections at Mach 2.
Torquing hydraulic pressure line couplings. Every single fitting must be sealed to 3,000 pounds per square inch.
Applying the structural canopy adhesive sealant. This compound locks out high-altitude moisture and holds the pressurized glass securely in place. Adjusting the canopy mechanical hinge. Oddly, the factory manuals from 1965 specified using a metric alignment tolerance, pressing down the heavy neoprene rubber gaskets. A single air gap here allows cockpit pressurization to explosively fail. Lifting the primary landing gear wheel assembly. This single forged piece weighs more than an entire modern compact car. Securing the high-strength structural lug nuts. Interestingly, over-tightening these studs will instantly shear them under combat loads. Mounting the multi-piston heavy brake calipers. These pads must survive friction temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees on landing. Positioning the historical squadron insignia emblem. Curiously, this specific squadron design was sketched on a simple dinner napkin. Snapping the red safety banner over the gear pin. Forgetting this tiny pin collapses the entire nose gear. Coating the deep black rubber sidewalls cleanly. It looks perfect, but these military tires only last for 15 landings. Torquing the stabilator mechanical flight control connectors. Surprisingly, a single loose bolt disables all pitch control instantly. Peeling the final protective cover plate away. The restoration path is clear. The Titan is ready to shine. The control center is fully reborn. Every flight instrument looks ready to guide this fighter back past the sound barrier. The unique wing-fold architecture is perfectly preserved. This mechanism allowed the massive interceptor to pack tightly onto carrier decks. The aggressive nose profile looks incredibly sharp. Ironically, early models carried this exact nose radar but completely lacked an internal cannon.
The canopy glass is completely flawless. The green tint is a specialized design layer meant to reduce high-altitude glare for pilots.
The engine nozzles are artwork. The unique rainbow coloration isn't paint, it's the natural result of intense operational exhaust heat. Every historical stencil is perfectly replicated. These tiny markers saved countless lives during emergency airfield recoveries.